Hi, everybody, and welcome. We have a quick live session today with Chris Musello. Hi, Chris. How are you today?
Hello, Tony.
Thank you for coming on and doing a quick session for us. We were very excited this morning when we woke up and saw, what did we see, Chris?
Well, we saw that the visa bulletin moved dramatically forward for a lot of categories, but probably most relevant for this group, the Philippine EB3 has become current.
Absolutely. So very good news, and we wanted to take a few minutes of your time. So this will not be our typical long Q&A, 30 minutes. We're just going to be spending a few minutes today talking about the visa bulletin and what this means for everybody watching. Very exciting news. I know there are a lot of people with a lot of questions. So Chris, I'll hand over to you.
Right. So there's two things to think about. First is if you are in the United States, you are likely eligible for adjustment of status starting October 1st. You do have to have your I-140 filed. So it's not enough if the employer has just begun the recruiting process, the notice process, or the prevailing wage process. But if your I-140 is filed, then you are likely eligible to file your I-45 starting October 1st. Amongst other things, you do need to get a medical examination done. And it's a very comprehensive process, the I-485. And so we would, there's no rush. You don't need to file it on October 1st. I know people always get nervous. Well, what if the dates retrogress on October 10th or 20th? That is not going to happen. It is going to be current in October. It is going to be current in November. It's going to be current in December. It's going to stay current for quite a while, I think. There's quite a few numbers out there, quite a large allotment of numbers out there. Now, if you're overseas, you should work through the NVC process. You should get your appointment scheduled in Manila. A couple key points there about that. Number one, you do need your visa screen. So if you don't have your visa screen, there's no point making your appointment in Manila because you will be turned down. So get your visa screen and then schedule your appointment in Manila. Number two, the Manila Embassy has, over the last 9 months or so, issued an enormous amount of administrative processing delays, including 221Gs. We are guardedly optimistic that that problem is being cured. And over the last 2 weeks, we have, at our office, I think Tanya has a number of these nurses as well, we start to see these appointments come back online. We've seen cases that had been put into administrative process get reopened at Manila. So that's good news as well. But I have to tell everybody, there is an enormous backlog of cases because Manila has not effectively processed many immigrant visas in about 9 months. And so even though you're current October 1st, it would not surprise me if you don't get your visa appointment for months. There's an enormous backlog of cases, and they have reduced capacity because of things like COVID. Having said that, just work through the process and don't focus on the anxiety of, am I getting my appointment tomorrow? Am I getting my appointment tomorrow? You cannot control that. The thing that you can control is working through the process, either through the NVC or directly with the embassy. And so all of your employers, I'm sure, are waking up to all this news as well. We all sort of expected it to happen, but it was certainly nice to see. Some of us, in fact, myself, I was even a little more cautious. I thought maybe it would only advance a few months, even though I know the numbers were there. And if you see some of the prior videos, you can hear some of the thought press on that. But nonetheless, great news for everybody. We should be able to move through these cases now. And but just the time delays are going to be there. It's going to take the embassy a while to schedule all these appointments because there are thousands of nurses in the Philippines who, starting October 1st, are now going to be current, and were not current to that yesterday. So good news for everybody. This is good news.
Good news. We want to celebrate the good news. Thank you for Chris. I think that gives everybody a lot of clarification. So I see, wow, we've got a lot of people joining us today. Sure. I'm just going to, if you have specific questions, please put them into the chat. I see Rafi has a question. I'd like to only ask what to do in the process of scheduling the ID since there are a lot of backlogs and 221Gs previously. I think Chris answered that question, Rafi, and I think the message is clear. Obviously, this is really good news, but it doesn't mean that everything's going to happen right away. We're still going to have to work through the process. So Patrick is asking, USCM will be swamped with applications. Will they be able to keep up?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question. And I think the answer is they'll be able to keep up, but there's going to be longer processing times. And again, there's nothing I can do, Tanya can do, or you can do. What we recommend, of course, is get your case in the queue. It also wouldn't surprise me if cases aren't necessarily even done in timing order, because I do expect, and particularly the Embassy in Manila, to be flooded with applications in October. So
okay,
it remains to be seen how we'll all shake out. But what you can do today, get your visa screen and get yourself in that queue.
And for those of you who have not yet passed your IELTS, because obviously that is a requirement in order to get the visa screen, if you were not trained in English, please get your IELTS now. There is no better time. You need to double down and really focus on the IELTS. And if anyone has not yet joined the Connetics Swish Free IELTS support group, I encourage you to do that. It's not just for Connetics nurses. We're looking for ways to help you and just to provide content to to help you get through the IELTS exam. It's really a difficult exam, so please share that with your friends, and you're welcome to join. We have a question from Sunny. My I-140 is still on the way, not yet approved though. I'm outside the States. Will this current visa bulletin affect me?
So yeah, this is positive. You may want to consider having your case upgraded to premium processing. Check with your employer. Probably depends on how much longer you have with your I-140. But certainly if you wanted to upgrade your case to premium processing, it would move you that much further down. But you cannot go through the NVC process, and you cannot go through the embassy process until your I-140 is approved. You know, one other thought comes to mind as well, Tanya, on the good news front. There is a visa ban for immigrant visas in the United States through December 31st. However, nurses and doctors are the only exception. So the good news there is that you should, as a nurse, move to the front of the queue ahead of other employment-based visa categories. So that's, now there's candidly, most of the employment-based visas in Manila traditionally are nurses, but still good to know that the nurses will be prioritized in Manila. In the third quarter.
So another bit of good news.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask if we need to request for Expedite interview.
Yeah, I would request Expedite. There's no reason not to, provide it again, as Tanya says, you have your IELTS done and you have your visa screen. If you don't have your visa screen, I don't see what's the point of expediting. In fact, one thing you can focus on, instead of focusing on when's my appointment going to be, focus on getting that visa screen. That's going to be a big constraint to getting your ultimate green card.
Correct. Okay, we have a question from Clarice. For those planning to apply now, what is the timeline from application to arrival in the US, provided there is no retrogression?
Yeah, well, you do have to talk to your employer about that. It's hard to say. Different employers may need to get prevailing wages done. They may need to get notice postings done. You know, if you have an employer, if you don't have an employer, that can take weeks or even months to really find the right match for you. So that's just such a very specific question. But theoretically, if you had an employer that was ready to file a case tomorrow, and keep in mind, it takes as many as 4 to 6 months for a fresh petition to even be ready to file, because we do need to get prevailing wages and we do need to get notice postings. Now, for some high volume companies and clients, that process is just ongoing, but for others, not necessarily. But if you had a client, if you had an employer who has their prevailing wage finished and has their notice posting active, and they were able to file your I-140 in October under premium, you could be into the NVC process by November. And then it's just a question of, and the complete unknown at this point is how many thousands of cases will you be behind in Manila, and then how quickly is the embassy able to process those cases. I can tell you from experience that I don't think the Manila embassy can process many more than about 1,000 to maybe 1,500 visas a month. So, and that's under full-time, non-COVID, full staff. So it's probably going to be considerably less than that at this juncture.
And that's just Manila. I mean, different consulates are going to have different processing times based on the volume, correct?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think if you're in the Gulf countries, if you're in Western Europe, Some of the, if you're Jamaican, maybe some of the Caribbean countries, maybe some of the African countries, you may see more favorable processing times. So one thing that I probably would not recommend at this point, and this is a fluid situation, I'm just giving you my opinion today. I could have a different opinion in a week or two. But if you are working, let's say in one of the Gulf countries, like one of the Emirates or something, I would probably, and you haven't yet selected a post, an embassy, I would probably try and do my interview in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or wherever you're living in the Gulf, because my sense is those embassies are going to have much less of a backlog than Manila.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, Dan is asking, will the backlogs affect other U.S. embassies overseas?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think nearly to the degree that they're impacted in Manila.
Okay. Kiboy is asking, can I go to the US now and file for adjustment of status?
No, you can't do it unless you can get in on unless you have like an H4 visa or something, but no, absolutely do not do that on a tourist visa.
I just got a private message from Anna who's asking, which table should I be looking at?
Yeah, so table employment category, table A. If you go to Masillo.com, that's the only one we publish there because we find it sometimes gets confusing.
It can be confusing.
Yeah, so if you go to Masillo.com, we posted the visa bulletin an hour or two ago, and so that may be a good place for you to just and if you're Filipino, the answer is they're all current, so it doesn't really matter what table you look at if you're
okay. That's the good news, and we celebrate the good news, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to just take a few more questions because Chris has very graciously given us this time because of the great news today. So I know that you have very limited time, Chris.
Yep.
Sarina is asking, hi, Sir Chris and Ms. Tanya. I have a question regarding the K1 visa. Is it possible to expedite if you're a nurse here in the Philippines? Will that affect the K1 visa?
No. The K1 is not eligible for expedited processing, unfortunately.
Okay. Mario is asking, I have a question, Ma'am Tanya. Is it possible or is there any chance for another retrogression in a few months? Or will it remain as it is as current? Thank you.
So theoretically, anything's possible, but I don't honestly believe that there's going to be any retrogression for many months.
Okay. J.M. Manella is asking, I'd like to ask, I'm already current. Do I need to secure a new NBI and police clearance, though it will be expired in November 22, 2020?
Yeah, I would probably go ahead and get one if you don't have an appointment yet, because if you don't have an appointment by November, then it will have expired, and that process can sometimes take a while getting the new clearance. So I would say go ahead and use that time. Hopefully you won't need it, but I would probably go ahead and do it.
Okay. Patrick is asking, Tanya, I've already signed up with my agency and already have visa feeble, and for some financial reason, I decided to move to another agency employer. Will it be possible to switch employers at this stage? Are there any legal implications with the USCIS NVC?
Yes, enormous legal implications. You're ineligible for a green card if you switch employers. That your new employer has to start all the way over and do an I-140 for you from the beginning. So yes, you should not pay that fee bill thinking that you can transfer it to a new employer, because your new employer has not been approved as a sponsor for you.
Okay. So thank you for that clarity of that answer. Karen is asking, what if case is in NVC and DS-260 is not submitted yet, but already accomplished? How long will it take?
I'm not sure what the difference is between submitted and accomplished, but you should submit and accomplish your DS-260.
Yeah.
Just work through the process in terms
of the process. Yeah.
The timing, or anyone who suggests to you a timeline is absolutely guessing at this point, because nobody knows the capacity and the speed at which Manila is doing. But what I can tell you is the faster you submit your DS-260, it's much more likely that you get a faster green card appointment.
Yeah.
So worry about what you can control, which is submitting your DS-260. Don't worry about what you can't control, which is how long is it going to take.
Yeah. And I think that's really good advice. I really want to reiterate that for everyone. I know that everybody's excited and that we have been waiting for this day for a long time, all of us. And, you know, we need to celebrate that moment. But I think, as Chris said, you need to just make sure that you understand that we're still working through a process. So it's not going to maybe be exactly as we hope and want in terms of the timelines. I mean, hopefully it will be, but you need to just work through the process, work with your agency, work with your lawyers, and just take it step by step. Okay, Jen has a question. U.S. embassies are giving very short notice before interview dates, like a week or two. Is it okay to proceed with the medical so when the interview date comes, the medicals are done?
I mean, it's up to you. Sure, if money doesn't matter, then go ahead and do your medical. There's no harm, but the medicals do expire. So, I would just take that and just recognize you may have to do a second medical, number one. Number two, this is the rare case, Tanya, where we hear somebody complaining that the appointments are moving too fast and under a week.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one, Chris. Okay, so it's kind of like a judgment call in answer to that question, Jen. Rioke is asking, if I've already completed with all the requirements, how long it will be, sorry, like the visa screen, sorry, I'm saying versus, like the visa screen, how long will it take for me to have an interview date?
Yeah, and that's the one again, unfortunately, it's impossible to say. We can't control that. Tanya can't control that. Nobody really knows how fast the embassies are going to move, because what we don't know is how many staff they have on. We know that they've been on a reduced staff because of social distancing at COVID. We also know that there's an enormous backlog of about 9 months worth of cases that could have been there that theoretically will be ahead of the folks who were approved this morning. That's the bad news. The good news is you're all current, and you all will be current for, I think, many, 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 many months. So,
okay. So Zelly's asking a similar question. We've already answered that question, Zelly. Okay, Ian is asking, okay, so this is an interesting one, is asking about adjustment of status if the nurse is already here in the US. So let's talk a little bit about that, Chris. And then I think we're probably going to have to finish up.
Yep. Yeah. So on the adjustment of status, the very first thing is you should absolutely have an attorney look at your case. In fact, I was hired on a consultation just earlier this week, and they did their adjustment of status themselves, and the case got denied. And now, unfortunately, because it wasn't done properly, because unfortunately this applicant didn't really understand the process, she's now actually subject to a 10-year bar from entry into the United States. So she has to leave the United States and is not allowed to come back for 10 years. So number one, I do think you want to have an attorney work with you on your case. Number two, it depends on your status, your non-immigrant status here in the United States. Generally speaking, if you're on an H1 or an H4 or an L2 or something like that, those are almost all fine. If you're on something like a TN, that's probably fine, but it's a little bit delicate and precise, and so you want to make sure that it's filed properly. If you're on something like an F1, that's probably fine. If you're on a B1, B2, that may not be okay. And so, so it's impossible to generalize on all those, other than you do want to make sure you take a close look at it. Number one. Number two, you need to have your visa screen. So I know we've talked about adjustment of status. I know we talked about green cards. Without your visa screen, you can't move forward legally. The case will be denied. So so do that. So get someone to review your case, qualified attorney, and then number two, get that visa screen. And then number three, you may be able to adjust, and if you're able to adjust, you should be able to get an employment authorization document and an advanced parole travel document they're taking about 4 months now. I don't know if that also is going to backlog, because there are not just the Philippine number became current, the worldwide number became current, the Indian EB2 and EB3 jumped about 3 to 5 months or so. The Chinese EB2 and EB3 moved as well, and so all of these folks are all going to be applying in October. And so it's not a question of the dates retrogressing. It's a question of how much capacity does USCIS have to adjudicate all of that stuff.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm so sorry, everybody. We are out of time. Chris has jumped in just to do like an emergency call for us, because this was such good news. We wanted to share that with you. We wanted to celebrate with you. and answer as many of your questions as possible. So good news, everybody. Let's all stay safe, stay with the process, as Chris said. And we are very excited and so happy that Lafora admin have given us this opportunity to share the information. Knowledge is power. And we hope to see you all in America soon.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.